Okay, in this next video on the mint box creation, we are going to take our outlined drawings and we're going to put them into the template that I'm providing. You'll see the link in the description in the video, so that the actual layers will get cut out and engraved or scored according to the layout that we have here. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is, from the last video, I've changed the design slightly. For example, I've put some lines in the mountains and I've added some detail to the plants as well. And notice that the insides are all in black and the outline is in red. And what I did basically, if I come over here to this layer, I'm just going to select it all, and I'm going to group this stuff right here. I'm going to group all of these black and red lines just so that they're easier to move around, and they'll be helpful in the next step as well. But what I did was I brought it back to my original drawing, and with the red outline visible, I came back in with my curvature tool using black as my line, and I made these little striations in the mountain. Notice also that I went over the areas where Appa is sitting as well as where the plants are, because I want to give the 3D effect, even though you won't see these lines necessarily because they'll be underneath Appa. It just gives a flow and a more sense of realism to that layer. So okay, so I'm going to take that entire layer, I'm going to put it over here for now. And you'll notice that I did the same with Appa and with the plants. So what we have to do is we're going to create this new template, and I'm going to start by going from File, New. It's going to be Print. It's going to be letter size. That's the size of the actual document. And we're going to make the orientation landscape. And for now, I'll call it Mint Box Final. All right, hit create. It's going to bring in a blank 8.5 by 11 page. I'm going to then file place. I'm going to look for the mint box template file. That's the one that we'll use to put in the background. We will, of course, again, make it a template, and we'll hit place. And now, so what we have in the background are 6 template spots. In this project, we're doing 3, maybe 4 layers, but I put in some extra here just because they fit on the page, and you might decide that you want to try a couple different versions of one of your layers. All right, so I'm going to go back to my original sketch, and one thing that you're going to notice is that things are going to be a lot bigger because this canvas is a lot bigger than this one, so we're going to have to size things down, and that's why it helps to group all of this stuff first. So I'm going to go make sure it's grouped. This one is. I'm going to go down to this one and make sure that this is one group. Good. And I'll go to the last one here and make sure that this is one group. Okay, so we're going to bring in these groups individually. And then there's a setting on the Mint Box Final that I want to make sure that you've checked off. So under the Properties panel, there's this little box here that says Scale, Strokes, and Effects. I think it's normally unchecked. The reason I'm going to check that is because when we come in and resize our artwork, normally the line stroke, which in this case is a stroke of 1, normally that doesn't shrink. So even though the image shrinks, the lines themselves stay 1 point thick. And it's okay. Ultimately, the laser cutter will recognize it as a single point anyway, but visually, it'll look better if everything shrinks proportionately. So I'm going to come here to my first layer. I'm going to copy. I'm going to switch over to my template file, and I'm going to hit paste. Now, when I paste it, you'll look and you'll go, oh my gosh, that's gigantic. And sure enough, it's really big. So I'm going to hold my shift key down. I'm going to drag a corner. I'm holding shift in order to not change the proportions of this drawing. And I'm going to get to about the size that I think it needs to be. I'm going to put it in the first layer. All right, looks needs to be a lot smaller than that. So now I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to look at the mountains and I'm going to say, this mountain range looks pretty good about right there. So the yellow outline is the inside dimensions of the box. So I want my wood layers to be as wide as that. This gray line, dotted line here, is the front frame. So what you see through the box is seen through this frame, and I'll show a picture of what that looks like along with this video. So I'm going to take this mountain range and I'm going to put it about right there. And now I'm going to go to my direct selection tool and I'm going to pick the spots that need adjustment. So this needs to go all the way to the wall of the box. Okay, these two sides. And then the bottom corners need to go where a corner would be if this box were actually with non-rounded corners. Okay, but because it is a rounded corner, I can click on a corner and I can drag, just like we did earlier in some other lessons, and I can drag it to match the shape of the mint box. Okay, so now this layer, this mountain layer, is ready to go. It looks like this. Okay, and I'll go get layers 2 and 3 and we'll finish this off. So come over here to my plants. I'll select them. I'll copy them. Go back to my mint box and I'll paste. Comes out really large. So I'm going to hold my shift again, shrink it down, and bring it over to my next layer. Now for me, I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, this looks pretty good. I want both plants to show up through the frame, so I'm going to put it about right, maybe right there or so. And then I'm going to grab my direct selection tool and drag these out. Make this bigger so everyone can see. Drag this out here. Drag my bottom corners out. I'm just lining it up as if it were an actual rectangle with sharp corners. About right there. Then I'm going to bring in the corners like that. Okay? Click on this one, bring in the corners like that. All right, layer 2 is done. I'm going to go back to my original. I'm going to select my last layer. I'm going to make sure it's grouped. Yep, it's grouped. I'm going to copy it, go back to my final, and paste it. There it is, nice and big. I'm going to hold my shift key, bring it down, and into my third panel here. Now this one, I can resize it. What I'm going to do, just to get an idea of how big it is, I'm going to put it in front of the mountains, and I'm going to think about how big I want it to be. That's probably good. I might size it down a little bit though. Maybe like that. That looks more like the original. If I go back to my original drawing, and I can see that the head was underneath the mountains. So I go back here, maybe a little bigger. So I'll go like that. Okay, and that one just goes in the third box like this. Okay, and now all 3 layers are actually ready for laser cutting. What we do on the Glowforge is we just go to File, Save As, and we save it as a PDF file. All right, you can have Mintbox Final PDF, hit save, and then what happens is it creates a PDF file that looks like that, and that's the final step. We'll be putting this into the laser cutter. I did want to show you one last thing, which is taking a look at the different sizing options. Remember earlier I said we did that little checkbox where we said scale down the points and the scale down the line sizes. So this is what happens if you scale down. This is what happens if you don't scale down. Those lines remain at one point. So visually it looks a little different. On the laser cutter, it won't matter. The Glowforge will just see it as a single line and it'll cut or score accordingly. But just visually up front, this is the difference that you'll see if you check or uncheck that box. Okay, that's it. I will do a final video to show you the actual output of all the items on the laser cutter.